Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our fifth and final Workplace Live of 2022. I'm Dan Nieves from the Global B2B Reality Labs team here at Meta, joining you live from sunny Miami. I can't believe we're already at our final live of 2022, and what an amazing year it has been. We've had an incredibly fortunate on a bi-monthly basis to have been joined by a wonderful lineup of thought leaders in culture, leadership, and the employee experience spaces. As those of you that tune in regularly to our live series will know, this year we focused on driving conversation around the future of work, gaining insight from our wonderful guest speakers on how leaders should be navigating through, redesigning, and ultimately enabling their organizations to thrive in the rapidly changing world of work. The topic of future work is not a new one. It's been an area of focus in consultancy firms, technology companies, and amongst thought leaders for a number of years. But thanks largely to the overnight force change that the COVID-19 pandemic brought to the global workplace, it has become a mainstream topic which every leader and every organization is now focused on. I'm really pleased to be closing out the series with today's wonderful guest speaker, Simerjeet Singh. Simerjeet is an award-winning keynote speaker, leadership expert, and mindset coach who helps leaders navigate change by embracing a growth mindset. With over 15 years as a speaker and coach on leadership, transformation, and culture building, Simerjeet brings a wide range of international experience. He's worked with top Fortune 500 companies globally, has been featured on the TEDx stage twice, and has been a frequent guest lecturer at leading universities. He's also the host of the Beginner's Mindset podcast, which provides listeners with insights from successful leaders worldwide. His inspirational videos have been viewed over 67 million times on his YouTube channel. His mantra, which I love, and his serious rules to live by is, I can't change the world, but I can change the world around me. Now, before I hand it over to Simerjeet, I just want to remind you that I want to put as many questions to Simerjeet as possible from the audience. So please type any questions that you have in the comments as you think of them, and one of the team will get them to me so that I can try to get as many as we can before we reach the half hour. So without further ado, welcome Simerjeet. Thank you so much for joining us today. And firstly, where in the world are you joining from?
Hey, Dan, it's a pleasure to be here today. I am joining from Jalandhar in the northern state of India called Punjab, and the temperature's just suddenly been dropping here, but I'm sure it's pretty sunny in Miami, Florida.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. Maybe to kick things off, I always love to start here. You know, the future of work, it's such a huge topic, and it can mean different things to organizations, particularly in how they should be approaching it. I know you've worked with a number of different leaders and organizations, so I'd love to get your perspective on what does the future of work mean to you?
All right, I just need to get access to my crystal ball here so I can gaze into No, I would love to give leaders and to those who've tuned in a single answer to that question, but I think a lot depends upon who's leading what. You know, it's coming down to you. But if you were to ask me, how do I see the future in general, or rather to rephrase it, how should we be looking at the future in an ideal scenario? I think with a mindset of with optimism, with the mindset that yes, there are immense opportunities, not with fear, not with the desire to step back and go back into the status quo, but with the mindset of exploration to see what's out there. So to me, I think there's exciting, immense possibilities with what technology is enabling this conversation, for example. I also believe it's down to the individual leaders of what they make this future out to be for themselves and their teams. So there's going to be parallel universes here, Dan, parallel futures here led by leaders. And we all have access to that crystal ball, right? And that's our mindset. It's how we look at things. Do you as a leader feel, the best days of you and your business are behind you? Or do you feel the best is still yet to come? Are you excited about change? Are you scared about change? Does uncertainty really throw you off, or is it something that motivates you to, really catch up, grab hold of those opportunities? What we're going through at the moment, change management experts, they have this three-step model. It's called the unfreeze, and then the change happens, and then the refreeze happens. I believe we are going through historically one of the biggest unfreezes then at the moment, where it's our moment to ask why we're doing what we're doing. It's our moment as leaders to step back from the status quo and question things and to reevaluate things and not to rush back to the status quo and to see what new possibilities we can create for ourselves, for the world in general. So I'm excited about the problems we will solve, the vaccines we will create, The hunger we will eliminate, the expansion onto humanity becoming a multi-planetary species and all those sort of big things. And we have the possibility, the wherewithal, the technology, and the desire to do that. So I'm really excited about what the future holds for us.
I love that. I love like the promise of the opportunity. We're going to talk more about the growth mindset in just a few minutes, because I know that is a topic near and dear to your heart.
Absolutely.
I kind of want to, you talked about sort of like we're kind of moving from into this kind of next period, right, where there's going to be obviously a lot of change and a lot of opportunity. You have the opportunity to spend time with a number of business leaders. I'm curious, from your perspective, how can leaders really excel, right, in their future work, right? And maybe a second part to that is, how can they upskill themselves for these new opportunities that we'll see in this next chapter of work ahead of us?
Leaders excelling, I think it's really important. What happened, because we have this virtual studio we created when I was giving virtual talks during the lockdowns and all that. And we didn't use it for an extended period of time, because I was busy with in-person presentations. And then like a month later, we switched all the devices on, and everything needed an update. Every piece of software, every piece of hardware needed an update, including myself, because I had to navigate my muscle memory there was a little bit weak about how to navigate with all the equipment here, which I was so used to, was second nature during the COVID times. So it's important to continuously upgrade yourself. It's important that leaders follow a basic model, and I teach this to companies across the world. It's the LEARN model, the acronym LEARN. L for continuous learning, and not just learning, unlearning, relearning as well. T-shaped learning, and the future will belong to people who have T-shaped expertise, with the top line of the T extending across domains. So you have a great overview of what's happening across the world in different sectors, different countries, economies, and then this line of the T going deep into one particular domain expertise. So T-shaped learning with the beginner's mindset. The Japanese have this wonderful philosophy of the beginner's mindset. And I read this quote which goes something like this: in the expert's mind, there are only a few possibilities. In the beginner's mind, there are plenty. So we need to be beginners again in this changing era. So the simple model is learn, L for keep learning, E for empathy. Put empathy at the heart of everything that you do. Empathy for your customers, for your internal, external customers, for the society at large, for stakeholders, for the world, for the communities that you live in. Put design thinking at the heart of all your products and services. So learn, empathize, adapt. So that's the A of the LEARN model, adapt. You cannot just hang on to things you were very good at 20 years ago, and being all nostalgic about it, but because we're not going to back to that. It's a new world. We need to keep adapting. The agility, how quickly we can adapt to change, how quickly we can, how much, can we replace the fear around change with the curiosity, for example? Let's see how this shapes out rather than backing off from it. So learn, empathize, adapt, rejuvenate, because these changing times are going to be very hard for the teams and everyone. So prioritize emotional well-being. Prioritize the sense of community, psychological safety. Leaders need to, with all the layoffs and so many other things happening in the economic scenario, to tell them we're here for you. We got your back. And even in day-to-day operations, and the N is to navigate north. The real job of leadership is to declutter, is to simplify and say, guys, this is our north, and the north will keep changing. It'll keep evolving, but Absolutely. Ensure that you're communicating that direction to your team. That's really important. So yeah, I think the simple model will really help.
That's fantastic. I think there's so many good aspects to that, right? Not only just purely like how are we building new skills, right? But then you touched on sort of the emotional well-being, right? And psychological safety, right? So many aspects, right? To really leading through change, right? And again, like you said, there's a lot of opportunity, right, still ahead of us, what we will create, what we will build, right? And so being able to sort of embrace that, like you said, with the beginner's mindset, I love that. I'm curious, and maybe you could, as a quick follow-up from that, we think about, leaders upskilling, you talked about the LEARN model, can you share a little bit about the importance of, bringing that growth mindset into a leadership's toolkit and how they can help them be successful, right, in this new world of work?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was Professor Carol Dweck at Stanford who first got the world used to this term called the growth mindset. It's been around in different shapes and forms, and since medieval times. Before that, in one way or the other, it's been with us, the growth mindset. Couple of things I think why it's very important in this current scenario. Number one, the growth mindset will help you replace your fear around change with curiosity. And look, wherever any corporation or any individual is today, it's thanks to a huge amount of curiosity that they had, the risk-taking ability. So it reduces your ability to not take setbacks personally as a leader. Your ability to roll up your sleeves and say, hey, this is a new piece of technology here, and we would want to see how this works out for us. Even if that puts you in an uncomfortable situation where as a leader, you don't know how it's going to shape out, how it's going to impact and your ability to do that is very, very important. I think a growth mindset enables you to try things that you haven't tried before, instead of just rejecting them, which is the usual human reaction to changing times. Instead of rejecting new things, you have this curiosity. So the old saying goes, curiosity killed the cat. I think curiosity was framed on wrong charges. It was ignorance that killed the cat. Let's settle this debate today. It was ignorance that killed the cat. Do you know what? There's this interesting episode from The Office, not The Office, the physical office, The Office, the Netflix series Office, where Pam, the receptionist, there's this guy who wants to sell a new telephone console, which would technically make Pam's job obsolete. And this guy wants an appointment with Michael Scott, who's the regional manager of Dunder Mifflin there. And she, every single time he turns up, she tells him he's not there, he's not in the office, he cannot see him, even if it's right there. And then with their video camera interview, she goes there and says later on, you know what, that gadget is going to take away 75% of what I do, so I'm not letting this guy in. And we laugh at that, and I quote that in jest because that's probably the default reaction of many people to new tech, new changes. But it is not the best for our growth as teams, as companies and organizations, because tech will free up so much time for us and so much effort on jobs which were previously boring. So we are now free to do things that human beings do best. Empathize, make connections, make introductions, take risks, execute, envision, do so much more.
Yeah, but you're right, though. Change is hard, right? Both as like from an individual standpoint, and then thinking about that multiplied across an organization. Change is difficult. One of the things you mentioned, and I really love that, sort of replacing the fear with curiosity, right? Really sort of embracing that. I think we think about the opportunities ahead, right? One of the really interesting things is, we're also going to have, a new generation of leaders, right? That will enter the workforce and eventually, right, step into leadership roles. And so I'm curious, I would love to get your thoughts, how can organizations today, right, start to take some steps to prepare this next generation, right, of talent and their future leaders for what the workforce of the future will look like?
Do you know what my biggest concern, and a lot of business leaders share this concern, is what's going to happen to building strong cultures in a hybrid work environment? What's going to happen to that natural assimilation where people used to pick up how things are done around here by actually being physically present there? What's going to happen to the old way when newcomers used to come in and not only attend the HR orientations, but also spend time with people, socializing and doing so many other things. So I think one of the top concerns, and here tech can help bridge the gap, with new technology that's coming in, is how to connect people so they can communicate in a human way. And then the whole idea of this hybrid working becomes more feasible. Then the culture part is not a concern anymore. So I think the top priority to train the next batch of leaders should be building the right culture. Leaders need to spend more time engaging, because the engagement numbers right now overall haven't looked very good in years. Here's a surprising bit, Dan. Engagement numbers actually went up during the pandemic, which means in crises we lead, in day-to-day operations we go back to managing people. And management, my friends, is valuable, but it's not a substitute for leadership. During the crises, we roll up our sleeves, we jump in, we're communicating more, we're relaying more information, we are hands-on, we are there, we are leading, we're inspiring, we're mentoring, we're solving problems because there's a crisis at hand. What if we could have more of that on a day-to-day basis? What if all of us across the world, parts of different companies and different organizations, don't just slip back into management, which is maintaining the status quo. Management is important, but leadership is challenging the status quo. So you need to be present more often, connect more, build cultures, spend more time building those cultures, and I think helping people collaborate because what will happen in this new world of work is it's not important where you are. Look at this conversation today. You're in Miami, Florida. I'm in Jalandhar, Punjab, and our viewers are from across the world logging in. Where you are is becoming irrelevant. So organizations will be hiring talent from all different corners of the world. The primary thing, I think, in business excellence or team excellence or leadership excellence is how to bring these people closer together with a sense of meaning and purpose so that it doesn't just become transactional. And that's the biggest risk out there, Dan, at the moment, is that business becoming, work and employment becoming purely transactional. I log in, I'll do what you've assigned, and then I'll log off, and that's pretty much it, right? And that's not how great things happen. That's not how great corporations are built. That's not how great societies are built. People need to go above and beyond and do so much more. That's the number one risk. And I feel with the right leaders stepping in with the right mindset and the right skill set, this gap can be bridged.
Yeah, it's such a, there's a couple of things there that one, you talked about this, that more and more, right? It's less about where you are. I heard someone share, work used to be a place you go, right? But now it's something that you do. And I think in one way, right, it's phenomenal because it will open up even more opportunity, right, where people can be spread across the globe, right, and be able to do work that's meaningful for them. But you talked about, that the engagement actually went up during the course of the pandemic, right? And they were sort of, leadership, and people were navigating the change and really leaned in. And then, we've started to kind of maybe slip back more into some of the day-to-day management. So it's quite fascinating, right? Sort of in those times of crises, right, it brings people together, and it's like, how can we then take some of that and continue to build that, right, into like the leadership toolkit as we move forward? Because you're right, it will only become increasingly more challenging, right, to build those meaningful cultures as we're more and more distributed and dispersed, which is great in terms of flexibility and economic opportunity, right? But it then does require new skill sets and behaviors, right, to really be able to build strong team dynamics, strong cultures that can really thrive, right, not just simply exist.
Definitely. So reskilling should also be at the top of every leader's list. Reskilling. How are we going to reskill our people so that they thrive in this new economy?
That might be a great segue. You started to touch on this, a little bit. Obviously, the impact of technology in the workforce and the workplace as well. So, would love if you could share a few examples, some of the positive use cases for how technology can really augment, right, the human connection, not replace, but augment, and really help enable greater community building at work.
That's great. I mean, I'd love to share a personal example there, if I may. When we were building this whole software and hardware to get this virtual studio up and running, we thought we had everything in place, so the mics, the lighting, the everything, right? The cameras, everything. But we missed one very vital human psychological need. That is the need for eye contact. Even if you're on a Zoom meeting, right? We overlooked it. Yep. We thought we were very good. We were very cool with all this gadgets out there. So I did this talk for a bunch of teachers in Abu Dhabi, and towards the end went very well. All the every flashy piece of things, everything going fine. But towards the end, the director of that organization had one little piece of feedback for me. He said, I noticed perhaps you were not able to maintain eye contact with the audience, and I really took that to heart, and we worked on it. And that single piece, that single improvement, was greater than all of the pieces of technology combined together, right? So we worked. There's always a solution out there. If you have the desire to, if you put empathy first, if you put that human connection first, you will find the solutions. And to understand that technology is not a replacement, it is something to supplement. It's a medium. So I think the opportunities are endless there, Dan, whether it's prototyping, whether it's design thinking, whether it is training and learning and development, or scenario playing, or sales and marketing, for example, or helping people on diversity training, or so much more. With all the technology out there, wherever it helps bridge the gaps which currently exist, I think that's a win-win for everybody. If technology can come in and bridge gaps of how we talk to each other, how we connect, how we work together as teams, how quickly information is transmitted, with what amount of clarity, we will flourish, because then the speed of execution improves. The level of trust goes up, right? If people are spaced apart and they're not having a piece of technology or hardware or software that's enabling that connection, the level of trust is going to drop after a period of time. We need and there are new technologies coming up all the time. Whether it's virtual reality or augmented reality or so many other tools, and they're all out there.
Yeah, no, and again, I think the point you mentioned around really being able to bridge the gap, right, create those connections, it's so important. And you talked about building trust, and I see we have a question that's come in, so I want to throw it to you as well. Obviously, right, building sort of strong team dynamics and cultures can be increasingly more challenging, right, as folks are more distributed. But the role of trust is so important, right? In sort of building a very thriving team culture and DNA. What are some of the ways that leaders could think about really building those trust-based relationships in a more hybrid environment?
The daily huddle, if you can't do it in person, do it virtually. But tell people, for God's sake, tell people what's going on. Get a conversation started about where we are going, what are we starting, what are we stopping, what are we continuing, what's going on. Involve them, and don't just make it transactional. Don't just make it limited to the tasks only. Save that little 5 minutes, the end of a Zoom call, just for socializing, like you would around a water cooler or in the cafe or wherever it happens to be. And also, schedule time specifically for networking, or have external experts, coaches and trainers and so many other people who can facilitate deep dialogue even through these mediums. And we've done it in the past. And, you just need the right people with the right skill set, right tools and right activities. People sing, dance, connect, open up, share, have conversations on Zoom. Right, so it's your creativity. Don't let it be limited by a flat screen in front of you. You can come up with creative ways if your team is spread across the world. But I think 2 or 3 things to sum up my answer to that question: tell people what's going on, communicate more often, right, and listen in a way that they feel involved. Even those who are not turning up because they're already feeling left out to some extent, maybe perhaps in some corner of their mind. As a leader, if you can make them feel involved and keep them in the loop of what's going on, you see the engagement levels will go up. So yeah.
That's great. And I feel like, especially, right, I think you mentioned about reskilling. I think even thinking about how we over communicate, right, as we move forward in a world of work will be really important, because again, right, just there's going to be a need for people to have the right context, the right information, the right awareness. And that becomes just even more challenging, right, if we're not in the same physical space anymore. And so love that. Make sure, listening, keep them involved in the conversation and communicate, right? Let people know what's going on so you can bring them along together with you. I cannot believe we're quickly running up on time here, which is hard to believe. So I'm going to throw one more sort of bonus question to you here. Obviously there's been a lot of talk, not only about the future of work, but the metaverse as well. So, kind of as we wrap for the morning, I'd love to hear your take on how do you think the metaverse is going to change work?
I'm personally very excited about it. I'd love to get my hands on one of the Quest Pro headsets, and because the features that I've heard about and seen in videos are very exciting. Whether it's personal productivity, whether your ability to project your screens in different places, or having Zoom meetings with your avatars, or with those 3D faces, or prototyping, or design thinking, or so many other applications, all the way from surgery to training future pilots and so many other things. So I think it's going to be the next big thing, because what we're seeing at the moment is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of when any new technology comes out, the hardware and software, as it improves exponentially, which eventually happens as more developers get onto that medium, and we see they use their creativity to come up with all sort of apps. It's very, very exciting. With the stuff that what can happen with AI and virtual reality and augmented reality, just for common people, some of the apps out there are mind blowing. With these, whether it's what you can do with your photos or what the bots can do now, and this is just the beginning. So the same I feel Metaverse is going to do with, especially with hybrid work, especially with collaboration and innovation, because you can do so much more prototyping. And if you can meet with colleagues scattered across the globe without traveling physically to that location, and have a conversation that really takes you to a decision point in execution, see how fast governments can move, see how fast organizations can make decisions quickly, how faster you can launch products, how much more you can involve your freelancers and the gig workers scattered across the world. So I just think the possibilities are endless, and I'm personally very excited about what the metaverse will bring in 2023 and beyond.
I think it's great. And I have a lot of thoughts. It made me think about, we're at the beginning of a journey, the tip of the iceberg, sort of that beginner's mindset, right? That, there are endless possibilities ahead of us as we think about how the technology can really help how we work together as one. We know we've got one more question coming in that I'm going to share here. And maybe this is a good way to wrap up. But Simerjeet, we talked obviously about, a lot of change. There's a lot of opportunity ahead of us, but embracing that change can be difficult, right? There's uncertainty, there's complexity in the world that we're in today. And so what advice would you give to leaders, right, to really be able to thrive in this world and as we move forward?
I think my top advice there would be to develop a positive outlook. Sit down with yourself and just reflect on this. Do I talk about, what's my general opinion on life? Do I think my best days are behind me or they're ahead of me, right? And that's just a simple question. How much time every week do I spend complaining versus how much time a week do I spend learning, right? When I'm speaking with my team members, what am I sharing more often? What is going wrong in the world, or what are things which are working well? What are the new possibilities that are emerging? How am I redirecting my own thoughts and those of my team members? So some critical questions to ask there. And if I am to break it down into a few simple steps, I'll say start by developing a positive outlook on the future. We talk about a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and it's always been a VUCA world. Life has always been uncertain. At 10,000 BC, when we were hunter-gatherers and living in caves, the day was uncertain. You wouldn't be sure whether you would have enough food for the day or not, right? Or when humanity progressed to agriculture, it was uncertainty. Every stage there's been massive uncertainty, and that's reality. That's the nature of life. Leaders who learn to thrive on this and use this as a tool to drive themselves and their teams forward, instead of this becoming a force which scares them, will be the ones that we need in these changing times. And I think getting in touch with your humanity and connecting with the humanity of other people, the human aspect of other people, will propel you to great heights, because as technology frees up your time, you will have more time to do what you do best, what humans do best: create, innovate, think, empathize, entertain, humor. As sarcasm, for example, bots and robots, they can't do all those things. I know one of the universities is coming up with a lol bot where they're going to program a robot with jokes. But hey, it's only a human being. Look at this, mirror neurons. I laugh and you laugh, and probably some of our viewers will also smile. Yeah. So these are things bots and technology won't be able to do for a while, and that's a unique human opportunity. So don't let this intimidate you. Let it excite you to what you can create and how you can lead your flock to the next level.
Amazing. Well, I think that is an excellent way for us to wrap. I can't believe how quickly the time has gone. But first off, I want to say thank you, Simerjeet, for being such a fantastic guest. I think we covered a lot of ground. I loved hearing more about the Learn model, the growth mindset, moving from fear to curiosity. So many good bits for today for us to take back and for our viewers to take back. So big thank you again for joining us. And also for everyone who's been watching, thank you for sharing amazing questions. Thank you for joining us today for this live and being such an engaged audience. If you enjoyed today's conversation, and if you don't already, I would highly encourage you to follow Simerjeet across the social media channels and tune into his podcast, The Beginner's Mind. As I mentioned, this is our last Workplace Live of 2022, which is so hard to believe that we are here in December. But make sure to subscribe and follow our accounts to stay in touch with our plans as we move into the new year. And if you want to explore and learn more about the future of work, you can do so at meta.com/work, which you can access through the QR code that is showing on your screens now. And again, a big thank you to everybody for your time today, for the conversations that we've been able to have throughout the course of this year. And again, a big thank you, Simerjeet, to you, an incredible perspective. So I want to wish everybody a fantastic December and a very meaningful close to this year. I hope you all take care, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks a lot, Dan, for being such a wonderful host. And this has been a wonderful conversation. Namaste.
Thanks, Simerjeet.
Thank you.